Easter is supposed to be a time of hope and renewal, but of course for many Australians with this economic crisis, they will be feeling the pinch. They will be suffering financial hardship. Do you blame greed for this economic crisis, and do you think it is a chance for Western society to reconsider its priorities?
Yes, I think we certainly should have a look at what we're doing, and I think that all the major players in the States and here have said that greed and foolishness have played a part in the present meltdown. And in every situation in which we find ourselves, especially situations of difficulty, we should use those opportunities to have a bit of a look at what our values are.
And what do you make of the way this government and other governments are responding? We're seeing a lot of spending and debt to get out of this crisis.
Well, I'm no economist. I hope they're heading in the right direction. That seems to be the consensus. Certainly there'll be very, very big debts for people in the future to pick up. But if it helps us to go through, move through, and stability returns, we'll all be very grateful, and we hope that's what's happening.
Now, I wanted to ask you this Easter, being a year since the World Youth Day in Sydney, what it has meant 1 year on for the church in Australia. Have you seen increased attendance in churches across Australia?
I think generally across the board there have been changes within the church and changes in the way outsiders view the Catholic Church. I think majority Australia was very surprised that so many tens of thousands of young Catholics were so joyful and life-giving and so attractive. I think it caused them to think. Within the church, with our young people, we're told that in the schools there's more interest in discussing religion. We've done a very big survey on something like 12,000 participants, most of them from Australia, and that shows that there are all sorts of benefits. They felt their faith was strengthened, they'd resolved to try to be better Christians. They felt less afraid of declaring themselves as Catholics in public. There have been all sorts of benefits.
What about enrolment in the priesthood? Has there been any change since World Youth Day to arrest any sort of decline in enrolments?
Well, in Sydney, things have been on the up and up since some years before I came here. I now have 50 young men studying for the priesthood for the Sydney Archdiocese. That's not too bad. We're very grateful. And after World Youth Day, the numbers have gone up to some extent. In New Zealand, the number of seminarians doubled. So we're very grateful for the bounce, and I think with a matter like vocations to the priesthood and to religious life for women, these effects will continue for quite some years.
Do you think the issue of celibacy is still a factor in deterring people from enrolling?
It's obviously a factor. Not everyone is called to be celibate, not everyone can be. But I'm in favour of maintaining this discipline because of the benefits it brings to the life of the church, the time and the energy and the vitality. As I say to the grade sixes, when I'm often asked this question, when John Paul II, he was Archbishop of Krakow in Poland, I explained he didn't have to ask Mrs. Pope and the little popes whether they would like to live in Rome. That's a small example of the practical advantages that comes from following the example of Christ.
Speaking of the Pope, the current Pope has created some controversy in his recent trip to Africa with some comments about AIDS, and he said that condoms weren't helping in the fight against AIDS but contributing to the problem. Now, do you agree with those sentiments, and how do you think the congregation, your congregation, would react to those sort of comments?
Well, he didn't quite say that. He almost said that in fact they might be rather hindering than helping. I agree with him totally.
How are they hindering?
Because they're encouraging promiscuity, because they're encouraging irresponsibility. Now, obviously they have, in a limited way, they work. But I remember returning from Africa by coincidence with a health worker from West Africa. He wasn't a Catholic, probably not a Christian. And the idea that you can solve a great spiritual and health crisis like AIDS with a few mechanical contraptions like condoms is ridiculous. Now, he made the point he'd been working in an isolated area, so the people were too poor to afford condoms. Often the ones that were available were very poor quality. They often weren't used effectively. The way forward to this in this crisis is the ABC principle. A for abstinence for people who aren't married. B, fidelity for those who are married. And with government programs, not the church, the government programs, for example in Uganda, they recommended condoms only for prostitutes and addicts. If you look at a country like the Philippines, which is Catholic, the infection rate with AIDS is much lower there than it is, for example, in Thailand, which is awash with condoms. South Africa, there are condoms everywhere, and the rate of infection is enormous. That's what the Pope was talking about.
One of the most famous converts to Catholicism, Tony Blair, has criticised the Pope for his entrenched attitude on homosexuality. He says it is out of step with...
Well, I think Blair is an absolute mystery. I mean, with Blair's record on life issues and understanding of sexuality, you know, for him to come into the Catholic Church with a whole set of attitudes which are at variance with Catholic teachers, teaching, you wonder about the level of instruction that he received. I'm not doubting his faith, but he's got a very imperfect understanding of traditional Christian morality.
But the Pope's position on this is that the challenge of tackling homosexuality is as great for humanity as saving the rainforests. Now, is that something that's in step with where ordinary Catholics would see this issue?
Well, I suppose in all these matters, the point is not whether one is in step with this group or that group or any other group, but whether one is heading in the right direction. And before this financial collapse, everybody, not everybody, nearly everybody was being told things were going very, very well. We've seen the result of that. The important matter is to try to find the truth and defend it reasonably and courageously.
But is that the truth? Is the reality that homosexuality is a challenge like climate change or saving rainforests?
Well, it's very difficult to make these comparisons. But certainly AIDS is an enormous health challenge. It's often...
but we're talking about homosexuality, not AIDS.
I'm talking about AIDS.
Yes, but the Pope was talking about homosexuality, likening it as a challenge to that of saving the rainforests.
Well, I think it's like comparing apples and pears. I'm not sure it's an entirely enlightening comparison. Both of them are challenges. And there's no doubt that the institution of marriage, man and woman and children, is absolutely central to every developed civilization. Marriage is under great strain here in Australia. That's what we're interested in preserving. And you speak to social workers here in Australia. They'll tell you that the disintegration is continuing and worsening, and we're seeing more and more problems of all sorts amongst young children. That's what we're attempting to defend.
Cardinal Pell, thank you.
Thank you. Good, David.